It began with a laugh. Not the kind that fills a room, but a nervous, trembling one. The kind that escapes when you're standing on the edge of something life-changing. Dakota Johnson still remembers that day, the first time she stood across from Jamie Dornan in a small, dimly lit audition room that would alter both of their lives forever. The studio was cold, the walls sterile, the pressure suffocating. Dozens of actors had already come and gone, each hoping to capture a spark of chemistry that could sell a story millions would soon crave. But when Dakota walked in, clutching her script a little too tightly, she wasn't thinking about fame. She was thinking about connection. And then Jamie looked up. He was calm, almost too calm, with that quiet Irish composure that made people wonder what he was hiding. The moment their eyes met, Dakota felt something shift. It wasn't attraction, not yet, but an instinct. That the man standing before her would change the course of her career, and maybe even something deeper within her. The casting director asked them to begin. It was one of the most intimate scenes in the script, one that demanded vulnerability rather than passion. The room fell silent. Dakota's voice trembled at first, but Jamie's tone grounded her, low, warm, steady. It was as if he built a safe space between them with nothing but words. When the scene ended, there was a beat of silence before the director whispered, "That's it." Not because they'd done something shocking, but because they'd made something real. Dakota would later say she couldn't explain what happened in that moment, only that she felt like she wasn't acting at all. Weeks later, when the official casting announcement dropped, Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson to star in 50 Shades of Grey, the world reacted with equal parts excitement and doubt. The media questioned if they could carry such an emotional, provocative story. But behind the camera, something genuine was already taking root. During their first days on set, Dakota admitted she was terrified. "I felt exposed," she said in an interview years later. "Everyone expected me to be this bold, confident woman, but I was scared." What calmed her wasn't direction, but Jamie himself. Between takes, he'd crack a soft joke, offer a reassuring smile, and sometimes just stay quiet beside her, a silent promise that she wasn't alone in the storm. Crew members noticed it too. There was an ease between them that couldn't be faked. They moved in rhythm, one instinctively anticipating the other's energy. During one particularly difficult scene, Dakota lost her line midway through, her voice faltering. Instead of breaking character, Jamie stepped closer, looked her in the eyes, and whispered, "You're fine. Just breathe." The camera kept rolling, and what was meant to be a scripted exchange became one of the most honest moments in the entire film. That authenticity wasn't just on screen, it followed them behind the scenes. During breaks, they'd sit together on the floor of the studio, trading stories about childhood, music, and the strange loneliness of being actors pretending to be other people. Jamie spoke about Ireland, his daughters, and his fear of being misunderstood. Dakota listened, occasionally teasing him with that mischievous smile the world would later recognize. Years later, Dakota revealed that the bond they formed was born out of necessity. Two people learning to trust each other in a world that demanded vulnerability for entertainment. "You can't fake intimacy," she said softly. "You either feel safe, or you don't." Jamie made it safe. The first day of filming was chaos, lights, crew members, cameras everywhere, but between them, it felt quiet. When the director called, "Action," the noise disappeared. What remained was something electric, fragile, and frighteningly real. Jamie once said, "When we filmed those early scenes, it wasn't about romance or seduction. It was about finding truth between two people who didn't know each other but had to pretend they'd shared everything." That truth showed. Every glance, every pause carried an unspoken understanding. And when the director finally called, "Cut," there was a silence no one dared break. Jamie smiled, a small, knowing smile that said more than words could. Dakota laughed again, the same nervous laugh from their audition, but this time it carried something else. Relief, gratitude, maybe even the beginning of trust. Later, during an interview, she would recall that moment vividly. "That day changed everything, not just for the movie, but for both of us." And though the cameras had long stopped rolling, something about that first connection never really left them. It wasn't love, at least not the kind tabloids dream of, but it was something undeniably powerful, a reminder that sometimes, when two souls meet in the name of art, the line between acting and feeling becomes almost impossible to see. Years later, when Dakota Johnson finally sat down for that interview, the one that made headlines across the world, she looked different. More confident, more self-assured, but her eyes still softened at the mention of one name, Jamie Dornan. The interviewer smiled and asked lightly, "Do you remember your first acting experience with him?" Dakota took a deep breath, laughed quietly, and said, "Oh, I remember every second of it." The audience leaned in. This was not a story about fame or scandal. It was a confession, a window into the most vulnerable days of two actors who had built a phenomenon together. Dakota began to recall those first weeks of filming, how everything felt uncertain. She described walking into the set, surrounded by bright lights, camera crews, and whispers of expectation. The entire production hinged on one thing: the connection between her and Jamie. And as she spoke, you could hear in her tone that what they shared wasn't just chemistry. It was something deeper, quieter, and far more real than anyone had imagined. "He had this calm energy," she said, "like he carried a secret that made everyone around him feel safe. I didn't know him at all, but when the director said, 'Action,' it felt like I'd known him forever." What Dakota revealed next stunned even the interviewer. During their first week, she had a complete emotional breakdown on set. The pressure, the attention, the fear of failure, it all collided. She locked herself in her trailer, unsure if she could keep going. Minutes later, there was a soft knock on the door. It was Jamie. He didn't say much. He just sat on the floor beside her, back against the wall, silent for a long time. And then he said quietly, "We'll figure it out together." That simple sentence, Dakota said, changed everything. It wasn't romantic, she clarified, smiling. It was human. It was the first time I felt like someone truly saw me. Not the actress, not the character, just me. After that day, their dynamic transformed. They stopped acting intimacy and started feeling it, not as lovers, but as two people building something fragile and honest. Jamie became her anchor, she became his mirror. He'd tease her before takes to ease the tension, and she'd challenge him to dig deeper into every scene. They created their own rhythm, a trust that was visible on screen but almost indescribable in words. Dakota admitted that sometimes the emotions blurred. "There were moments when I wasn't sure if it was me or the character speaking," she said softly. "I would look at him, and it didn't feel like we were pretending." The interviewer asked if she ever fell for him. Dakota smiled, thoughtful, not denying, not confirming. "I think we fell into something, maybe not love, but truth. And truth can feel a lot like love when you're that exposed." Jamie, in a separate interview years later, echoed the same sentiment. "We shared something unique," he said. "It was built on trust and vulnerability. You can't fake that, and even though life moved on, that connection will always be part of who we are." For both of them, 50 Shades wasn't just a film. It was a defining chapter. It forced them to grow up, to understand boundaries, and to navigate the thin line between performance and reality. When the cameras stopped, they went back to their separate worlds. Jamie to his family, Dakota to new projects. But the bond they'd built lingered quietly in the background, untouchable and undiminished. When asked what she learned from working with Jamie, Dakota paused before answering. "He taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness," she said. "It's power. And it's okay to let someone see the real you, even if it's just for a scene." There was a moment of silence in the studio after she finished. The interviewer, visibly moved, whispered, "So, after all these years, what would you say to him now?" Dakota smiled, her eyes glistening just slightly. "Thank you," she said simply, "for making me brave when I didn't know how to be." The clip went viral overnight. Fans flooded social media, reliving the on-screen magic they had shared and realizing, maybe for the first time, that it came from something deeply authentic. It wasn't just two actors playing roles. It was two souls connecting under impossible circumstances. In the end, Dakota's revelation wasn't a scandal or a confession of forbidden feelings. It was a story about trust, courage, and the strange intimacy that art can create. Because sometimes, the first person who helps you find your voice doesn't stay forever, but they leave an echo that never really fades. And for Dakota Johnson, that echo sounded a lot like Jamie Dornan's steady voice saying, "You're fine. Just breathe."